Are you a Christian parent, grandparent, or pastor who is uneasy about public education, what we call government schooling? Are you someone who has children in the system and have been feeling uneasy? Well, you have come to the right place. And maybe you're a pastor. You have been thinking, man, there has to be something else that can be done. There has to be something we can do as a church. The government schools are completely lost any credibility whatsoever. What can we do? Again, sir, you have come to the right place. Are you a grandparent or someone without children, but you have been wondering, man, what can I do? There's got to be something we can do about this education system. Maybe you work at the church with children in Sunday school and you're just seeing all the bad behaviors being brought back from the government school system back to the church house. And you're wondering to yourself, what can we do about this? Well, again, my friend, my brother, my sister, you have come to the right place. This is the Counterrevolution. Again, my name is John Rushemeza. And today, to open up this season of the Counterrevolution Podcast, I have what I believe to be a very important conversation with my two brothers, Alex Newman, founder of the Liberty Sentinel. It's a media organization. Alex is a journalist, an award-winning investigative journalist, and a champion for education, specifically Christian education, has been sounding the alarm for decades. In fact, you will not be able to watch a documentary about education and not see Alex Newman in it. Also, Robert Bortins, he is the CEO of Classical Conversation and a champion of education independence. He is at the front line trying to educate parents and legislators about the dangers of school choice and government funding of education. So these are my two brothers. They wrote a book. The book is titled Woke and Weaponized, and they are coming on to talk to me about their newly released book. And I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I hope this conversation sets you on the path to find out what it is that you specifically can do for your own community, for your own family, with regards to education. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I have the privilege of talking to two of my brothers, Alex Newman and Robert Bortins, great and powerful men of God, as many people, those few people, I guess, who watch this podcast already know by now. But Alex, Robert, welcome to the Counter-Revolution Podcast once again.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us, John.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so you guys are co-authors of what I believe to be, and I've said this before, but I have no problem saying it again, what I believe to be probably the most important book this year, unless you guys turn around and write another one like it. So you guys wrote a powerful book. This book, Woke and Weaponized. And the book, I haven't bought a physical copy yet, as I just told you guys. But what I read thus far impacted me greatly because it confirmed to me something I've been praying about for a while now, wondering whether I was on the right track in pursuing this mini project that I'm on here on this podcast. So I wanted to extend my thank you to you guys up front just for that.
Oh, well, thank you, John. We really appreciate the podcast, and more people need to be watching you and what you're doing, because you're not afraid to speak the truth. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this revolutionary moment that we find ourselves in, counter-revolution is exactly what we need. So, appreciate you having us on. Appreciate the opportunity to discuss the book. And I agree. This issue is just critical. It was great to see you at the Christian Education Initiative conference, and I know we're on the same wavelength here about the importance of dealing with this issue before they capture the hearts and minds of even more children.
Amen. And guess who I met at the CEI conference? I met my brother's mom here, Leah Bortins. She got to say hi to us, say hi to my kids, my wife. It was great. It was a great privilege of mine to get to meet your mother.
Yeah, I hated I couldn't be there, but I was coming off 3 states in 4 days or something. Didn't want to add a 5th.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we had a great time. But so, again, you guys wrote a book. My first question to you guys, and I'm sure you've heard this question from other people, and you will hear the question after this. I'm sure of it. And the question is, why this book? Why now?
Yeah, I think we had been discussing this issue for a couple years now, and we just saw that it was needed. Alex and I can only talk to so many people one-on-one or in groups, and if we could really get on paper what we're seeing, what we knew, and even dig deeper into the history of why the public school was started, who's been financing the school choice bills, is that really the answer for our society, or is that another big government trap that unfortunately a lot of people are falling for? And so, people might think I'm crazy, I don't know, but at least if they read the book, they know why I believe what I believe. And quite honestly, I've never had anyone actually push back in an intellectual way against any of these issues that I'm bringing up. And a lot of times privately, they'll admit all of these issues are a big concern to them as well. So, Alex?
Yeah. Well, this is a book that unfortunately fills a massive gap in the market. Now, the Overton window is moving, and I'm grateful for that, right? Just even a few years ago, I remember conservatives were still talking about, like, how do we fix the schools? Like, maybe if we run for school board. I think those days are starting to be in the rearview mirror now, at least among people who are, serious in the movement, leaders. The question now really is, how do we get the children out most quickly, most effectively, and with the least amount of damage? And there hasn't really been an articulate, well-defined, well-rounded answer to some of the arguments that the pro-school choice movement is making. There's been plenty from the left, of course, the teachers' unions, and that's not always necessarily a rational argument. A lot of it's emotional. You hate public schools. You hate children. Those aren't real arguments. But somebody needed to do it from a biblical perspective, from a principled conservative perspective. And so we really saw this huge need. And honestly, I didn't want to do it. I would much rather not get into arguments with people who are on the same side as us, people who are friends on all these other issues. But it needed to be done, and nobody was doing it. And so, Robert and I talked and said, hey, we've got to do this.
Yeah. No, you guys are right on the money. I have a question specifically for Alex here, but Robert can chime in too if he sees a window there. And the question is, Alex, you've written on these issues before. I do know specifically. These are things that I was thinking as I was reading this material. Is your previous book, Crimes of Our Educators, that you did with the great Samuel Blumenfeld. And then most recently, you released your other powerful book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. So what would you say is a distinction between these two books?
Well, Crimes of the Educators was my first really deep dive into the education issue. And what we focused on in that book primarily was the reading issue. We have now half of American adults, according to the federal government's data, basically functionally illiterate. And so we really did a deep dive into that particular issue, how it happened, why it happened. We argue that it was deliberate. And I think that issue by itself deserves a whole book worth of treatment. Indoctrinating Our Children to Death was kind of my bigger take on these things, right? Zooming out a little bit, where did all this come from? Who came up with the idea of a government school? What did education look like prior to government schools? And where do we go going forward? What really makes Woke and Weaponized different is we're really focusing on the Marxist aspect. That's one key element. We also went a lot deeper on very critical questions. The first chapter in Indoctrinating Our Children to Death dealt with Robert Owen, and there's a lot of really important information in there. But in Woke and Weaponized, we even took it a step further. We did much deeper research. We found out this guy was talking to spirits by his own admission. We found out he was waging war on the great trinity of evil, being marriage, family, private property, and the church, Christianity. And then almost the second half of the book deals with what I consider to be one of the biggest threats right now to our whole movement. And that's not my opinion, that this is what the enemies of Christian education and educational freedom are doing. I've got their documents. We've got their documents. We talk about it in the book. Whether it's UNESCO advocating government funding for Christian schools and private schools to take them over, whether it's the billionaires like Bill Gates and George Soros and Mark Zuckerberg and Michael Bloomberg pouring massive amounts of money into so-called school choice. These are issues that really need to be dealt with. And actually, those are subjects that we didn't even touch upon in the other books. So this stuff needed to be covered.
Amen. Robert?
Yeah, I mean, I've had read Alex's previous books, and even like he's dug deep. There's plenty of books that talk about what the problem is and trying to wake people up, because you can't diagnose a problem properly if you don't know the root cause. And we have too many people trying to solve symptoms instead of root causes. And what I'm really proud of in the kind of the last 2-3 chapters of the book is we actually lay a path forward for legislators, for think tanks, on ideas that will actually help with moving us in the right direction instead of moving us in the wrong direction where we're going today. And we laid those out, and we even admit, like, these are not necessarily all ideas that we love, but these do move the needle in the right direction, because right now the needle is moving drastically in the wrong one.
Yeah, and I felt the same way. My big thing was the history aspect, and of course, one of the things that got my attention to begin with was the history, right? What went wrong? I always go try to figure out, well, what went wrong? Something went wrong at some point. And in this book, I realized there was a lot of new information that I didn't know before. And I've been in this rabbit hole consistently for the last 5 years straight. Ever since I found Alex Newman and Samuel Blumenfeld, and then that opened me up. Then my algorithm basically changed after that. But there's a lot of information I really never heard before. But you guys took time to really document a lot of things just from a historical perspective, which is in part why I said in my article that I think a lot of, really, to me, seminaries and colleges should consider this book as a resource, because the way you guys tied it together to bring it back to the issue of education is amazing to me. So the one of the big thing that you guys wanted to make clear from the start, from the get-go, was the fact that education was not viewed as a neutral thing. Even then, back then, the people, some of who were naive and some of who were intentionally doing things to really change things, they all knew that education could not be neutral. So my question to you guys is, in your view, as you guys think through the material, who would you say, okay, this guy knew what he was doing, and who would you say, okay, this guy may have meant well, but he was caught up in the spin?
Yeah, Alex, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, happy to. I think a lot of the people involved here probably thought they were doing the right thing, but their premises were all wrong, right? If you have wrong ideas, then as the old cliche goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You
Right.
may think you're making life better for people when you're actually destroying people. And I think most of the people that we expose in the book, starting with Robert Owen, going on to Horace Mann, and even continuing on to John Dewey, I think they truly saw themselves as better than the rest of us. They truly believed that they knew better for us what we needed. They knew better for our children what they should be learning. And I think, based on my reading of a lot of their work, a lot of their essays, a lot of their speeches, even a lot of their books, I've got a massive collection of John Dewey books in my house. Got a huge amount of material from Horace Mann and Robert Owen. I think they were probably well-intentioned idealists who had either been handed over to a reprobate mind, or in some cases literally were communicating with demonic spirits. And to non-Christians that sounds crazy, and even to some Christians, what do you mean? Well, if you listen to what they're saying, for example, Robert Owen, in a speech he gave just a few months before he died at the Congress of the Advanced Minds of the World, and there's that superiority there. They think they're the advanced minds of the world. He goes to great lengths to explain how he's so sure that these spirits that are communicating with him are actually spirits of dead people, some of whom he knew, and that they're super intelligent, and now that they're on the other side of death, they have additional wisdom and knowledge, and that they're just interested in improving the race, is how he put it. So I think they were well-intentioned. But I do think also there is a conspiratorial element here that's always been kind of inseparable from the idealistic movement to build a utopia. So you look, for example, at some of John Dewey's associates. John Dewey would have been absolutely nothing. He would have been less than a footnote in history if he had not teamed up with John D. Rockefeller. If he hadn't had all those millions and millions of dollars to do his experimental school and to buy support and all this, he would have been nothing. Nobody would have ever heard about him. He would have died, and none of us would ever be thinking about John Dewey. But because he had this money from Rockefeller and other people I regard as evildoers, he was able to do big things. And if you read some of the things that, for example, Frederick Gates, who was in charge of Rockefeller's Education Foundation, the General Education Board, if you read some of the things that he said about what they were doing, I am convinced that these people were actually evildoers. These people were consciously and deliberately engaged in a process of dumbing down the population, not for some idealistic idea of building a utopia, but for selfish reasons. They wanted cheap workers who would shut up and do their job and make more money for them, right? They didn't want people who might grow up to be competitors. They didn't want people who would be philosophizing about the meaning of life when they're supposed to be, working on the assembly line. So I think there are a lot of evildoers involved, but a lot of the key people, as wrong as they were, I think truly saw themselves as kind of great saviors of humanity, if you will.
Robert?
Yeah. So, I mean, the USSR and the communists there definitely saw that they could not defeat the United States. And so they intentionally targeted our education system, and specifically our teachers, colleges, to co-opt those to help get their ideology inside of the United States. So that's well documented. And so, they found a lot of maybe useful idiots who were convinced by their lies and their propaganda that these things would work for them. And so I think, a lot of the names probably weren't intentionally evil, but like Alex said, they have a worldview that is does not work with how the world actually works. And so you can have all these good ideas, but if that's not how God designed our planet to work, how our relationships to work with our children, that it's not going to work out. So ultimately, there is definitely people who, like Robert Owen, who wanted to see Christianity destroyed, and he saw that the public schools as a way to do that. But many people just thought they were trying to make a better life for themselves. And, those are the kind of worst kind of people, because they're trying to do something. They really do believe it's the right thing to do, but it's absolutely the wrong direction. And that's pretty much how we got here today. Where we are is a lot of people with good intentions making very bad decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to just add a little bit on that, if I may, John.
Go ahead.
Robert mentioned the Soviet element. And the Soviet element, we actually did some really groundbreaking research. I mean, I think the book is worth the price just to read the chapter on Soviet involvement in the subversion of our education system. And when you're dealing with the Soviet Union, yes, there were a lot of useful idiots who helped bring these evildoers to power. But when you get to the top of the pyramid, these people aren't ideological communists. These people are psychopaths. They're megalomaniacs. They are obsessed with power. They are obsessed with ruling over their fellow man. I think some of them, like Karl Marx, if you read his poetry, openly in league with Satan himself. And so, there's really that dark element. And we have a whole chapter on the big money foundations that played such a critical role in weaponizing our education system. And when you start looking at the people who were leading these foundations and the people who were funding these foundations, you really find a very, very dark strand there, a very dark element of deceit, of lies, of incredible greed. And the Ford Foundation is a very good example of that. Alan Geither told the chief investigator for Congress, they had a select committee investigating this, and he admitted that they were trying to so alter life in the United States that we could be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union. We knew a lot about what the Soviet Union was doing at that time, so no honest, well-meaning person could look at the Soviet Union and say, hey, that's going to be good for my fellow human beings. Everybody with a brain could look at that and say, wow, mass murder, gulags, torture, starvation, anybody who would actively promote that, knowing what they knew then, clearly was not well-intentioned, clearly had evil designs in mind.
Yeah, the ultimate evil design is to destroy the capitalist America. And it's interesting as you guys are talking, because another thing I've been obsessed with is the Martin Luther King situation. I've been watching Chad O. Jackson's MLK Project. And interesting enough is that Moscow was at the top of that, of infiltrating and causing that whole thing here in America as well, which ties perfectly with the education, kind of the subversion through education. But that's another video altogether. And also another thing I was thinking is to ask you guys, when you guys are writing this book, right? Who is your primary audience? Who are you trying? Who is your main focus? Right? Like, you're writing this to somebody primarily. Who is that?
Yeah, so for us, we put together some personas, but a couple big ones was definitely pastors and Christian leaders need to pick up this book and read it, because they're in charge of their flocks. And I always tell people I have sins that you do not want to answer for, and that I have to answer for at the Bema seat. But Jesus told the story of the Good Shepherd, where there was 100 sheep and they lost one and went to find it. Well, our churches, according to Barna, are losing about 72% of the children after they graduate high school. And so if you call a good shepherd someone who loses one sheep and goes to find it, what do you call someone who loses 72 sheep? And so so for them, they need to wake up and understand what the actual, philosophy is of the public school system, so that they can recalibrate, their thoughts on that, and understand they need to fear God more than the teachers' unions. So that was a big one. And then, of course, like I said earlier, think tanks and just people who want to love freedom and want to know why they need to defend it.
Yeah. And, speaking for myself, 100% agree. Pastors were one of our major targets. Pastors have so much influence over the minds and over the hearts of their flocks. And that's true even today, even as America turns more and more away from God. So pastors are definitely a big target. I would like to see nationwide an uprising of pastors saying this is unacceptable. We're not going to continue to allow these children to be indoctrinated by pagan and godless forces. It's just not going to happen, at least not on our watch, at least not without us saying something. Parents also, parents are ultimately the final decision makers. The pastor can't decide to pull the children in his congregation out of the government school. That's ultimately going to be a decision of moms and dads. And so we really wanted to reach them. And as Robert alluded to at the beginning, we really have a lot of information here that's aimed at policymakers. There are thousands of lawmakers across this country who have massive influence over the hearts and minds of children, who have the ability to stop the flow of endless tax money to these systems, who have the ability not to put in place bad policies and to pursue good policies. And then, of course, opinion molders, right? I mean, this book is probably not written to the average guy on the street, Joe Sixpack, who doesn't think too deeply about stuff, but we're really aiming for parents, pastors, policymakers, lawmakers, and opinion molders who really think deeply about important things. And if I may, as we were talking about, the idea of whether these people were good or bad or idealistic, a quote came to mind. You're probably familiar with it. It's by the great C.S. Lewis. He said, "Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive." Yeah. And it's hard to escape that thought as we're thinking about this, because when people are evil and they're consciously oppressing people and doing evil to people, they might take a break. They might have trouble sleeping at night. But when you're doing this and you think you're helping people, it's even more dangerous, because you can justify it to yourself. You feel like you're doing a good thing while you're destroying families, destroying children, destroying the next generation. Unfortunately, it's something that needs to really be discussed, because whether they were well-intentioned or not, and I think there's a decent mix on both sides, but really, as the Bible says, by the fruit ye shall know them. And the fruit of this after multiple generations is very clear. And that's not something that anybody can debate. I challenge anybody to say the government schools are doing a good job. Hey, look at your own data. Less than 1/3 of the poor children trapped in these institutions are even proficient in anything. They don't know what bathroom to go into anymore. Some of them think they're cats and they want to pee in litter boxes. Nobody can tell me that this is a good fruit coming out of this system.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I as you guys know, I like to play devil's advocate a little bit. And so here is the thing, Alex and Robert. Can't we just fix the schools? Can't we just, as you said earlier, go run for school board, reform the schools, flood them with Christian educators and janitors, and reform the system?
I'll let Alex answer first, because I know he's got to run and I can stay on for a little bit longer. So Alex, why don't you answer, and then you can drop off.
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and I struggle to contain myself. It's like somebody asking me, like, well, yeah, you have cancer, but why don't we just reform the cancer? We'll make it a better cancer. We'll make it less bad. I know some people are hearing that and they're deeply offended. Are you saying Aunt Sally works at a cancer? Yeah, I'm sure your Aunt Sally is wonderful, and I'm sure she's a godly lady, and I'm sure she's doing the best that she can within a wicked system. But she knows just as well as I know that if she were to go into that classroom and tell these children that they are fearfully and wonderfully made by a loving, all-powerful creator who sent his son to die on the cross, who was resurrected again on the third, she'd be hauled out of that classroom faster than if she was sexually abusing the children. And that's a fact. And everybody in the system knows it. So the short answer is no. The system cannot be reformed. And when you read Woke and Weaponized, you will see it's not just a futile endeavor. It's an oxymoron. It was a bad idea from the start. We talk about the fruit. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the seed for a moment. the very seed that created this plant that's bearing all this terrible fruit was poison from the beginning. It was created by people who hated God, people who hated the church, people who hated the moral precepts that God reveals to us in his word. And so, no, it unfortunately cannot be reformed. Now, you can make it less bad. Yes, getting the transgenderism out would make it better than having the transgenderism propaganda in, but it's still not going to make it acceptable. It's still not going to make it okay. It's built on a faulty foundation. And so, unfortunately, it needs to be ripped out from the roots. And sometimes people get this wrong. I think often deliberately. They accuse you of being against education. And, of course, I'm not against education. But I use collective agriculture in the Soviet Union as a good example. Right? If you were to criticize the collective farms in the Soviet Union, they say, you're anti-farmer, you're anti-agriculture. No, I'm not anti-farmer. I'm not anti-agriculture. It's just a dumb system that's wasting enormous amounts of our efforts. It's killing people because they're starving to death because collective agriculture doesn't work. And so I'm not anti-farmer at all. I'm pro-farmer. And the fact that I'm pro-farmer means I want to dismantle the system that is destroying agriculture and replace it with a non-system, with a free market that we know produces abundance and prosperity and freedom and things like this. So the short answer is some elements of the government school system can be made less atrocious through a lot of effort. And we've been doing this for conservatives have been trying to reform the system for 60 years. And what do we have to show for it? Well, every generation it gets worse and worse. Would it be even worse if all these wonderful, grandmas and moms weren't at the school board every week hollering about the bad things they're doing? Certainly it would be. But is there some glorious previous age of government education that we can go back to? No. As you'll see from reading Woke and Weaponized, the idea was always to create the system for the specific purpose of changing the hearts and minds of the children so that you could transform society away from Christian society, Christian culture, Christian civilization, and toward a totalitarian system where the individual has no rights, where family is abolished, where God is marginalized at best. And so, we've got to start from scratch. We've got to start over. It cannot be fixed.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we talk about kind of in those back chapters is how we don't want to rip the rug out, right? If I could snap my fingers and public schools all disappeared, families have to make a decision tomorrow, and that's probably not tenable for our country. So how do we make actual steps in the right direction to actually empower parents instead of empowering bureaucrats, to actually reduce our tax burden instead of redistribute our taxes, and let people know tangible ideas that will work, that have proven to work in the past, that they can start right now, and even inside your own family, inside your own church, inside your own community. You don't have to wait for any bureaucrat or politician to vote on it. You can start today.
Amen.
Yep. Amen. Do you have to go, Alex?
Unfortunately, I do. I promised my wife, and I know she's starting to get antsy. We're in the middle of a move, but really appreciate it, brother. Thank you for having me on the program. I hope we can talk again very soon. Thank you for having us on. It's been a great joy to be here with you and Robert and talk about this really, really important work, and I'll look forward to our next visit.
Yes, sir. Thank you for stopping by. Truly, I am forever grateful for you guys agreeing to come on here, but also for this book, this contribution. This is a gift to the body of Christ, and I am honored to be a part of the project in a very, very small way. So thank you, Alex, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. God bless you both.
All right.
God bless you.
All right. Well, my brother, so just let's continue talking then, because you specifically have been a champion of education freedom, independence, education independence, which is something that I am thankful for, and something that a lot of people have not thought about. Something that Americans, who are the freest people in the world, at least for now, have not thought about. Most people my age, I'm 40 years old, have never thought about some of the things that you guys talk about um, over there at Classical Conversations. So, school choice. Um, just think school choice, capital letters, and small letters school choice. Can you give us the distinction?
Yeah, so the not capital letters school choice is parents have a choice. They've had a choice now for decades in the United States. You can send your kids to private school, you can homeschool them, you can send them to public school, charter school, Montessori's. There's thousands of choices that you can pick from, and there's one that the public pays for via taxes.
Yeah.
And there's choices that are independent because whoever pays for them is going to have a say in how they're run and the curriculum and everything like that. So we've had education independence for a long time here in the United States. And so we compare that to the school choice movement, capital S and capital C.
Right.
That idea is that you'll hear the terms money's following the child, or the public school, if you have money going to it, that they're going to distribute public money to private schools or specific individuals who qualify to pay for any sort of educational option. And so, if you can, different states do it different ways, but some of them, like in Arizona, they'll give you $8,000 and you can apply that to your homeschool bill or your private school bill.
Yeah.
And so, that's what they're saying is school choice, is that the government is going to finance your choice, which ends up being really no choice at all. And so this was something Betsy DeVos, she was the education secretary in Trump's first term, and we talk about her a little bit in the book, not so much, but this week right now, there's a quote going on. And so this quote, I think, from her really illustrates that capital S, capital C.
Mm-hmm.
Let's stop and rethink the definition of public education. Today, it is often defined as one type of school funded by taxpayers, controlled by government. But if every student is part of the public, then every way and every place the student learns is ultimately of benefit to the public. That should be the new definition of public education.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting because as we have this in the book, as we talk about the 10th plank of communism is free public school for everyone.
Right.
And so no doubt did Karl Marx's endgame have that be controlled by the government. But you also need to look at the historically, what was going on at that time and what did the word public mean? So in England, they still have public schools today. And what do we consider public schools here in America? Private schools. So all public schools meant when he wrote the free public schools at that time was schools that are open to the public. So that anyone could enroll their kids in, versus the aristocracy schools where you had to be a king or prince or well-connected to be getting into those. So for free public schools, like, he would have been all about this kind of school choice ideology. And so Betsy DeVos right there is just reframing the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto. And so she probably not aware of that. She's one of those people that she's trying to do good for the kids. We need to get them out of this failing system. But what they don't understand is the system is who pays for it. That is the system. You're not taking kids in public school and putting them in private school. You're taking private schools and private education and turning it into public education. And this quote that's being passed around, celebrating everything that's going on right now, is very ironic, and that's the string of history that we pull through the book, because we know that these people's hearts in the right place, and if they have the accurate information about the system, then maybe they'll spend their time, energy, efforts, talents on actually things that will work, instead of wasting their time, their precious time on this planet, pursuing ideologies and legislation that will ultimately backfire and sell out what they were hoping to protect. And so it really is a Trojan horse. And, behind the scenes, most honest people will admit that there's significant issues with it. But of course, they're marketing it and selling it and spending millions, if not billions of dollars on it, as we document in the book, both sides of the aisle. It's quite scary to think that, in a decade from now, people won't even know that you could pay for your own education anymore if these laws keep expanding across the United States.
Okay, so you guys, like I said, are champions with regards to education independence. You guys did put in a lot of work in this area of the book to really outline the argument for any thinking conservative, anyone that wants to be honest. If they read these chapters in the book, they have to at least see, at best, they have to see why we are against the big S, big C school choice movement, because there's alternative options, right? So can you talk a little bit about some of the alternatives that you guys propose in the book to help Christians specifically, but just fellow Americans, do something different?
Yeah, so like as I was talking to earlier, universal school choice is the clear and present danger. Right. We outline ideas that have other issues with them. So one of them being like non-refundable. So we have refundable tax credits and non-refundable tax credits. So things like that we define. We have whole pages on all the different types of school choice. And so ultimately, what we need is churches to set up education funds. We need businesses to set up education funds. People to be able to keep their own money and not cipher it through the government systems. Like, one of the things they sell school choice on is, you just got to keep your own money. Well, actually, you don't. You pay taxes, and then they put it through, pay their, bureaucracy, and then they give it back to you, or they send it straight to a school. So at no point are you actually getting your money back. You're getting other people's money because you're not really paying enough into the system to cover it. And now you're adding all these additional people there. And so we talk about, for the longest time in our history, like the Catholic Church did a great job having schools and making it affordable for lower income people. And, if you went to their church, you got discounts and things like that. So we go through some of those ideas, some ideas like I said, non-refundable tax credits, where you got to keep your money and never send it to the government to begin with, based on kind of like what you'd be paying into the system instead of above and beyond that. Obviously, you need, things like in our own county, our zoning laws make it so you can't basically start a private high school without going to the zoning board and getting it rezoned. Now, we have good people that'll probably let you do it, but you still have to go beg a government bureaucrat to start a high school. Well, we have so many people homeschooling and in private schools for up to middle school that really the only kind of issue that we have right now is in our high schools. Mm-hmm. And they're like, they want to go spend, $140 million to build a new high school. It's like, well, you could spend $140 million and go get a bond and all these things and, increase taxes or whatnot. Or you could just make it so people could build private high schools. And all you have to do is change a line in in a law to allow zoning up to and through high school, and then people could put their own money into it as well. So those are some of those things. We got ultimately it's up to parents taking that personal responsibility, and for our legislators to enable that, and for our church pastors to demand it. And with the shekels come the shackles, and with tax redistribution schemes, like, because I see like stuff that goes on behind the scenes, it's really just a big money grab by donors who are going to be making tens of millions of dollars with students that basically are going to get funded through the government system. And so that's really kind of the heart behind it, is they want to get money out of the teachers unions and into their teachers unions who are donating to Democrats, into their own donors who will give them money for reelection. And so, it's ultimately creating a new entitlement program, and it's going to ultimately make it so that it normalizes that for everyone in our country. So things like, if we have universal basic income for schools, then we'll have UBI for healthcare and UBI for housing and UBI for food and eventually just UBI for everything. And so it's really taken us down a pathway that is unsustainable for our country. And instead of increasing taxes, which we'll have to do to pay for all these programs, we give a bunch of ideas that actually let you decrease taxes and reduce the amount of bureaucracy at the state level considerably. So, and we go through a lot of that history there as well. So those are some of the ideas that we put out there. I mean, this whole idea of these kind of like Trump saving plans right now, like, do I love those ideas? No, for a number of reasons, but it'd be a significantly improved position than doing universal school choice. We have HSAs now for healthcare where it's paid for by this individual and by your company. You could have ESAs that are financed by the company and by yourself that have tax advantages, as opposed to ESAs now that are fully funded by the government. And so there are just nuances to some of these systems that would increase the independence of these programs and ultimately be able to unwind them sometime in the future once we get everybody in an independent state. So it's we talk about some programs that are working now at the state level that the school choice people just simply ignore or pretend don't exist. So, yep.
Yeah, and like I said, you guys did a great job of ranking the many different ways. I think you ranked it from worst to best.
Least worst.
Huh?
Worst to least worst.
Yes. And explained, each time why this is the worst, but not as bad as the previous one. And so that helped me to get a even more informed perspective of these arguments. But the question, and I've heard you talk about this before, I've always wanted to ask you this. You're a CEO of a company. You are, you're in this business. This is your lane. You stand to gain a lot in the billions. You stand.
Yes.
Classical Conversations would blow up like no other because you guys are already doing well from what I can see. You have some really faithful customer base that maybe customer is not a good, but good people, Christians, families that are committed to the education of their children in the classical model of education. I consider Classical Conversation, I'm sure I've told you this before or said it somewhere, I consider Classical Conversation one of the most important organizations in this country and around the world. But you guys can make a lot of money. You guys can take billions from this school choice. You guys are already set up. Like you have everything in place. You stand to make boatloads of money and explode Classical Conversation make it available to even more people, expand, your programs and things. Why fight it? Why not take the bags?
It's a good question. The Bible says, "Seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else is going to be given to you." The love of money is the root of all evil. So we definitely don't want to love money. We don't want to enslave and provide a higher tax burden on our fellow Americans, paying for something that the government clearly shouldn't be paying for from a biblical worldview perspective. I did the math the other day, like not even adding any students, right? But if we champion the school choice movement, of course, I'd be on TV all the time and invited to all the cool parties that I'm not invited to. But I think I figured out we could probably sell the company for like $22 billion. And just so you know, yes, we're successful, but we don't, we're not, we're a small, we're a big, small company, from a financial side. And so, it would grow, 10 times, 20 times, 100 times, just because we could charge more and say it's free and help all these people out. But you're not really helping the people if you're lying to them. And ultimately, this is a program that is not going to benefit them in the long term. So we're not going to be participating in it, and we don't think Christians should be participating in it. So, but yeah, it's a lot of money. I mean, I wouldn't have to be talking to you, John. I could,
Yeah,
I could be going to a Diddy party or something.
There you go. Well, I don't know about that, but
it's my God has cattle on 1,000 hills.
Yeah.
He'll take care of us. No sparrow falls to the ground without him seeing it. He makes sure the flowers look beautiful. So we got to either rely on God or rely on government. This is training people. This is discipling people to rely on government instead of God. If you look at the Old Testament, that's basically the big problem with everyone there, is they all want to not rely on God, not rely on his provision, but to rely on government to provide for them. So, we've seen it play out, and it hasn't worked out well at any point in human history. And so I want my children to be free. I want other people's children and grandchildren to be free. And unfortunately, this is not the path that gets us there.
Yeah, but I have to say, man, I remember when I first heard you say this, and, to me, that's what makes your message so compelling. And that's what makes you specifically, but your mom is also on the front lines of this, and Lauren and others. That's what makes you guys, I feel, to me, a lot more compelling, is that a person can't accuse you of doing this for money.
People have. People have. I haven't figured out how this is benefiting me, but
because other CEOs, I'm sure, sit around and laugh like, what is wrong with this guy? This is money ready for the taking. You could get government contracts. You can do all kinds of things to get, heritage foundations and many others to put classical conversations right on their businesses and websites. But you guys are going against the grain, which to me tells me to stop. It's like, Moses stopping at the fire. Like, that's not burning. Why is that not burning? Right? That's what caused me to think, like, what's wrong with these people? Either they're onto something, or something else is going on. So I just thank you for
I always tell people, like, if you can show in the Bible where we can take this money, I'm all for it. I just haven't found anywhere in the Bible that says Christians can take this money.
Yeah.
So I'm very financially motivated, John. Someone to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, but it's a matter of principle. If we're in business as Christians and we don't have any principles, right? I'm willing to excuse people who don't know better, right? They don't know
Sure.
better. They think they're
Oh yeah.
doing the right thing. Um, and so those people, we can excuse them. But if you know better and you keep making excuses in the name of the almighty dollar, then we just have to mark and avoid. That's our job. That's we're obligated to do that. Um, so what the path forward? We let's end on a good note, because we're talking about the book, we're talking about the ideas. This is a powerful book. I really I'm recommending this book heavy. I meant everything I wrote in my Substack.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, and but I want us to have a good message. You said you had pastors specifically, or primarily in mind as you wrote, but you also had other patriots, American patriots, and specifically Christians who are in politics and in the culture, trying to figure out a path forward, right?
Yeah.
For us to continue to be faithful with what God has entrusted with us. Um, I'm gonna say a quote here, and then you can take it from there. The path forward requires both prudential wisdom in navigating current political realities and unwavering commitment to the ultimate goal, the complete separation of school and state. Our goal remains nothing less than the full restoration of education freedom for our children, our families, and our civilization.
Yeah, that's the end goal, and it starts with fathers turning their hearts back to their children.
Mhm.
It starts with the church bearing one another's burdens, and it starts with people who should know better, not leading people down paths that can ensnare them. And so, ultimately, what's wrong with the world? Well, I am.
Yeah.
We all have to take responsibility of what God has given us, and to realize that we live in the richest country that has ever existed. That we have wealth beyond our means, but we ship our children off to people who hate us for their education and for their discipleship. And so, the path forward is really for for Christian leaders to understand the moment that we're in, to understand what's really at stake, and to not compromise our children and grandchildren's future, because this path is unsustainable, and we need to be soberly minded. So I'm excited. There's more and more people. The more people that read this book, listen to you, watch my podcast, Refining Rhetoric, listen to Alex, the more people are coming to our side as these programs continue to expand or be enacted for longer. There's more and more problems that are coming up with them, and all problems that Alex and I predicted years ago. You can watch or listen to anything that we've read in the past. So the good news is, I think the tide is turning. But like anything, the enemy is working overtime to capture our children. And as we say, they can be discipled in a way that says God's your father and your provider, or they can be discipled in a way that says uh, that the government is your father. And we know that latter does not turn out well for anybody, and it's been shown time and time again throughout history. So, Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, and those of us who do know history are doomed to watch everyone else repeat it. So I'm trying to get everyone else on board with what's going on, so that they have the spine and the gumption to make hard choices, to disciple their own kids, and not let the Marxists disciple them instead.
Amen. It is really the title I forgot to say at the top of this conversation. It's very apt because the culture, the children of today, especially those in government schools, are woke and weaponized, as we see in the streets over there of Minneapolis, for example. But I just want to say thank you for this book. Thank you for everything that you do. And so the question then again, a very common questions at the end here is, what else are you doing? Where can people find it? And how can we be praying for you specifically?
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, you can go to wokeandweaponized.com or search Woke and Weaponized at amazon.com to go pick up the book. I mean, it's something that every Christian should read. I have a weekly podcast, Refining Rhetoric. You can go to my website, robertbortins.com, to see what's going on, and follow me on X. I'm active there on a daily basis, The Robert B. Show, and I'd love for you to follow and connect with you there. So again, thank you so much, John, for all you're doing and having Alex and I on the show today. So really appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And that's the show. Thank you.
God bless.
All right.